All right. Good morning, everybody. Today is Wednesday, August 9th, 2017. And this is Before the First Cup with Jules here on UCY.TV. Happy Wednesday, everyone. It is a beautiful 68 degrees with morning sun here in upstate New York. So where do we leave off on Monday? We titled the show Life, Space, Time, H2O, DNA, Photons, Elements, and Frequencies. And we'd been down a rabbit hole over the last few days looking at some natural elements, CO2 being utilized to make more bazillionaires, all in the name of climate change. But we started then looking at how life is really kind of tied to physics and how everything in the world kind of comes down to vibration. And we were looking at some things on Earth, what's micro is macro in space, and all being made up of the same elements or contents, and maybe some of the same science and mathematics come into play. And it was a pretty interesting theory, I thought, but I ran across something today. So I promised at the end of the show that we would eventually get to 5G. We never quite made it there. We've done a bunch of shows. If you want to catch up on some of the stuff we've done previous to this point, just go to Google and search Before the First Cup 5G, and you'll find all the shows we did on that, or at least links in the notes of those shows. So what we're going to talk about today is some of this advent, this coming of the Internet of Everything, all in the name of keeping you connected 24/7, doing a smart AI-fueled dashboard with statistics and sensors and proximity, where they can actually not only bag, tag, and track all your data and data of all devices that are connected. I think we read a story last week about every device and application will be connected by 2020. But this is going to be the ultimate net to be dropped over humanity. And I've been finding some disturbing things. So it looks like the FCC finally approved the spectrums for 5G. But I'm seeing that there are all these big companies jumping on board, and the FCC chairman is really kind of accelerating things. We're going to look at a few of those stories. But this really is coming. And if you do a search, and I might link to an interview or a talk or two. I was listening to a couple YouTube videos last night, and I ran across a reference in a comment on a video about watching Barrie Trower, Barrie Trower. He was in the military in the UK back in the 60s as a microwave warfare specialist or whatever, and he actually got quite a few degrees, and now he teaches at a university level, physics and stuff. But one of the things he got a degree in was human physiology. So he had a very interesting take, being hands-on. He was diffusing microwave weapons that they had under the ocean or something he was talking about. And then he teaches all this stuff at a university level, and he is not paid by anyone, and he does all of his lectures and his consulting for free. But he's an older guy. He reminds me of my granddad when I was a kid, with his little English accent. He was a nice little old English guy who doesn't have any. He doesn't seem to have any bad leanings. But he's talking about how literally the microwave radio spectrum, and we've talked about this before. We talked about microwaves at length and radio spectrums back a few months ago. Do that search too, you'll find them. Which, by the way, I accidentally, when I was in the hospital, I thought I had done this, and I actually did. I accidentally, while on a mobile device, hit a button that said delete playlist, and I'm like, oh no, and I couldn't undo it. But that playlist happened to be Before the First Cup on YouTube. And thank God all the videos were still uploaded, but I had to rebuild the playlist. But I must have missed a bunch the first time around building that playlist, because I had like 500 and some. And when I redid the playlist, getting rid of all the duplicates, there was like 624 now. So, guys, that's a lot of archives, and that's a lot of research done. And I would say a good 90% of every one of those shows, if you hit the description down link on YouTube, or if you go to our main UCY.TV page, you'll see all the archives for everybody's shows down below, or down to each show page has their own YouTube playlist. You will find in the description that if there were any links provided that were talked about during the show, at least I try to document all those. So if you try to tell Nana or your mom or your sister or your cousin about some of the crazy stuff that you heard on Before the First Cup, you can hand them something, typically from some well-known publication. I've talked before, I try not to go to pieinthesky.com and get my research. You know, I go to places like MIT Technology Review, or some of the scientific journals, or some of the well-known newspapers, or standards organizations, or whatever, to document some of the things that we research. But anyway, I want to make sure that people realize that that's there, because I know if you go to the video, you don't always see that right away unless you take one other step to click and open up the description. So, all right, where do I go from here? So we were talking about frequencies and life and space and CERN, time, the difference in time between here and space. And in one of the stories we read, they had explained looking at that time differential in the speed of light, because do photons ever die? Oh, we found out, no, they don't. We also found out, and I think I mentioned it, but I didn't read the story, that scientists had finally discovered, after an 80-year quest, on how to turn light into matter. Now, go figure that one out. You know, when I first kind of postulated what that could possibly mean in the weird science fiction world of science that we live in now, it was pretty mind-boggling. Turn light into matter. I mean, this could be like a teleporter or some sort of replicator that you don't even need a raw material, but light. Light which is prevalent from the sun in our atmosphere everywhere. Scientists discover how to turn light in matter after 80-year quest, and this is out of Imperial College London. Imperial physicists have discovered how to create matter from light, which is a feat thought impossible when the idea was first theorized 80 years ago. In just one day, over several cups of coffee in a tiny office in Imperial's Blackett Physics Laboratory, 3 physicists worked out a relatively simple way to physically prove a theory first devised by scientists Brett and Wheeler in 1934. Brett and Wheeler suggested that it should be possible to turn light into matter by smashing together only 2 particles of light, which are photons, to create an electron and a positron, the simplest method of turning light into matter ever predicted. The calculation was found to be theoretically sound, but Brett and Wheeler said that they had never expected anyone to physically demonstrate their prediction. Well, hey, guess where they could do experiments like that? I'm just going to guess, but talking about smashing atoms together, big atom smashers such as Large Hadron Collider and the Fermi Lab and things of that nature. Back in 1934, we didn't have such things that I'm aware of yet. Though maybe we did, and we just didn't know about it in deep, dark, buried hallways underground. It has never been observed in the laboratory, and past experiments to test it have required the addition of massive, high-energy particles. This new research, published in Nature Photonics, shows for the very first time how Brett and Wheeler's theory could be proven in practice. This photon-photon collider, which would convert light directly into matter using technology that is already available, would be a new type of high-energy physics experiment. This experiment would recreate a process that was important in the first 100 seconds of the universe. Ding, ding, and that is also seen in gamma-ray bursts, which are the biggest explosions in the universe and one of physics' greatest unsolved mysteries. These scientists have been investigating unrelated problems in fusion energy when they realized that what they were working on could be also applied to the Brett Wheeler theory. This breakthrough was achieved in collaboration with a fellow theoretical physicist from the Max Planck Institute of Nuclear Physics who happened to be visiting Imperial College. Demonstrating the wet the Brett Wheeler theory would provide the final jigsaw piece of the physics puzzle, which describes the simplest ways in which light and matter interact. The 6 other pieces in that puzzle, including Dirac 1930 theory on the annihilation of electrons and positrons, and Einstein's 1905 theory on the photoelectric effect, are all associated with Nobel Prize-winning research. Professor Steve Rose from the Department of Physics at Imperial College London said, quote, despite all physicists accepting the theory to be true, when Brett and Wheeler first proposed the theory, they said that they never expected it to be shown in a laboratory. Today, nearly 80 years later, we are proving them wrong. And what was so surprising to us was the discovery of how we can create matter directly from light using the technology that we have today in the UK. As we are theorists, we are now talking to others who, of course, can take our idea to undertake this landmark experiment. Guys, this is frightening. If they can create matter from light, just think about some of the moves forward that we have made in chat this morning. Someone was mentioning stem cells and 3D printers and stuff, and we've talked about being able to 3D print organs from like those iPS stem cells taken from your skin, and how insane that is. And eventually maybe it'll be 3D printed humans, or they were talking about that biological to digital converter, or vice versa, digital to biological converter that Elon Musk and Peter Thiel? No. I don't remember which lunatic it was, but it was one of them. How they were working on talking about being able to potentially, at some point in the future, be able to 3D print drugs remotely. All they got to do is take the little blueprint formula and bzz, bzz, bzz. Everybody's going to have a cartridge of raw materials, and eventually they won't even need it if they can print matter from light. Just think about that. They could 3D print Atlas robots all at a location where it is showing some sort of uprising that was being sensed and detected by all the new 5G sensors that are put up all over your town. It's just insane, guys. I mean, literally, this is science fiction lunatic world that we are entering right now, and people don't even realize the extent of how crazy technology has become. They are cracking the secrets of everything. So anyway, first the scientists would use an extremely powerful high-intensity laser, just as I expected, to speed up electrons just below the speed of light. They would then fire these electrons into a slab of gold, ding, to create a beam of photons 1 billion times more energetic than visible light. The next stage of the experiment involves a tiny gold can be called a Hohlraum, which is German for empty room, and that's Hohlraum. Scientists would fire a high-energy laser at the inner surface of this gold can to create a thermal radiation field, generating light similar to the light emitted by stars. Maybe gold is the key. How interesting is that? If you go back to some of the translations, and I know people think Sitchin is lunatic, but I don't know. If there's a couple other people who can translate Sumerian out there, how come they didn't translate the tablets or go through and retranslate the tablets to prove Sitchin wrong? But he had talked about some of the translations that he had found, and one of the things that apparently they came to Earth for was to mine gold, and it was to fix their atmosphere. But maybe it was to create light. I don't know, because without light, of course, you wouldn't be able to grow anything. Just interesting. Gold has always been one of those materials that has fascinated humans throughout history. They would then direct the photon beam from the first stage of the experiment through the center of the can, causing the photons from two sources to collide and form electrons and positons. It would then be possible to detect the formation of the electrons and positons when they exited the can. Lead researcher Oliver Pike, who is currently completing his PhD in plasma physics, just like they're plasma bombing the atmosphere, said Although the theory is conceptually simple, it has been very difficult to verify experimentally. And we were able to develop the idea for the collider very quickly, but the experimental design we propose can be carried out with relative ease and with existing technology. And they do have a lot of military technology. Beware, guys, because there's a lot going on in the microwave field in military technology. We've talked a lot about the big investments in energy weapons that are happening right now worldwide. Everybody is in a technology race. Well, don't think that technology race isn't spreading to all of these other disruptive technologies. Within a few hours of looking for applications of holoroms outside of their traditional role in fusion energy research, we were astonished to find that they provided the perfect conditions for creating a photon collider. The race to carry out and complete the experiment is on, he says. How frightening is this? This research was funded by the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council and the John Adams Institute for Accelerator Science and the Atomic Weapons Establishment, and it was carried out in collaboration with the Max Planck Institute for Kern Physics. Oh, probably CERN. I think they are related to CERN or connected to CERN or an investor in CERN or one of them. Working at Fermi. Welcome to the Max Planck Institute for Kern Physics in Heidelberg. And it was one of 83 institutes and research establishments of the Max Planck Gesellschaft, which is the Max Planck Society. And they do experimental and theoretical basic research in the fields of astroparticle physics and quantum dynamics. Ding-a-ling. There you go, guys. And this is pretty frightening. So if we can literally, now at least in theory, and we are going to put it to work in the lab, create matter out of light, the world in the future is going to be a very strange place. So I came across another article today that kind of hit home a lot of the things that I was trying to get across the other day, talking about matter, sound, light, frequency, music, and the musical scales, and everything being mathematics. This was a post on LinkedIn that was posted by someone named D.K. Matai. He's chairman of Q Brain Capital, Key Labs, Quantum Diamond something. I don't know, all this stuff. But it really struck me. It is titled Colors of Sound and Light, Energy, Frequency, and Vibration. And it was published on December 8th, 2014. One of history's greatest engineers, Nikola Tesla, who invented the means to transfer and distribute electricity over long distances, once said, "If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." The same holds true for the world in which we live and our interactions with each other, and indeed our interactions within. Guys, I truly believe that. I think it is that simple. Energy, frequency, and vibration. That's what it all boils down to. Everything is a part of that. More than a century ago, in 1910, the American New Thought author Wallace D. Wattles, W-A-T-T-L-E-S, wrote in the, quote, Science of Getting Rich, and that's pretty telling, "Everything you see on Earth," he says, "is made from one original substance, out of which all things proceed. There is a thinking stuff from which all things are made, and which, in its original state, permeates, penetrates, and fills the interspaces of the universe. A thought in its substance produces the thing that is imagined by thought. Man can form things in its thought, and by impressing his thought upon formless substance, can cause the thing he thinks about to be created," ding, i.e. becoming gods. This is insane. And, we're using science now and technology to make this all possible here in the future and to be able to surveil everything down to potentially atomic level. Bad tag and track. put it all into the big database in the sky, and then access that data, apply data analytics run by artificial intelligences that learn and create themselves on their own. That's what our not too distant future looks like. So anyway, about this formless substance, anything he thinks about can be created. In other words, thoughtware, software, and hardware are interchangeable. To confirm this point, the latest 3D printers can now print almost anything in solid from scratch. And I mean, even down to organs and things of that nature, and that digital to biological converter, maybe even people. At some point in the future, they had talked about scientific experiments in quantum physics, and particularly those at the European Organization for Nuclear Research, i.e. CERN, at the Large Hadron Collider, ding-a-ling-a-ling, in Geneva, Switzerland, continued to demonstrate that once we break everything down to its core, there is pure energy behind everything. When we go down to the subatomic level, we do not find matter, but we find pure energy. Some call this the unified field or the matrix. Others talk about pure potentiality, all being energy. That's pretty much what it is. I mean, guys, if you think about this, this is what they are stealing from us right now. This is what is being enslaved and directed. You know, one of the things that I was reading in some of the 5G mechanics and standards that the IEEE is building is that a lot of these new antennas, there's two different types of 5G. One's going to be these small transmitters. There'll be the long backhaul, which is between like towns or cities. And then there's going to be the short haul, which is within cities. So they can have within literally a millimeter distance for sensing. I mean, they're going to be highly accurate. They can literally see things with this millimeter waves that they're going to be using as a back-end booster to the 5G to increase speeds and bandwidths. They are going to have the capability to surveil things at a very cheap, very fast, very high frequency throughput video scale, mind you, real time, on a mobile platform at a global level. That's the insanity. And these frequencies within and outside of the microwave spectrum, something we've talked about before, have complete and direct, utter influence on the biological organism. That is all of life on the planet. We've been discovering more and more that, yeah, we are frequency, we are matter, we are energy. Our brain, and I don't think I have the story up, but I get nervous when I go to open something new. I got the story the other day about the brain and the brainwaves. Scientists have no freaking idea where that comes from in the brain. Like, I'm sure it's from the electrical impulses of some sort. You know, that's all going on. Zippity zapping. We have chemical, electrical conductors in our body, the potassium, the salts, potassium and magnesium, and I believe selenium is another one that's good for electrical connectivity within the body and helps how different neurotransmitters work. But beyond that, they really, really don't know where brainwaves actually come from. I got it. Hold on. Oh, very carefully open. Oh, all right. Here, we'll move this one over so it's next. So let's go back to this frequency, color, sound, vibration. A vibrating field. This pure energy vibrates the field around it, and a vibrating field of energy which attracts like a magnet and attaches to energy of the same vibrating frequency. You know, I got to tell you, I really think when I was talking about each individual vibrating on their own frequency, and then there's, you know, the melodic frequency, which means you're healthy, and then when you get the out-of-tune tuba, that's when something's going awry. And they've already been discussing being able to diagnose disease just from the sound of your voice. Well, I have this other theory since I was a kid. I noticed that a lot of my really good friends and friends that have lasted a lot of years we had very similar likes in music. And I always thought, how neat is that? Because people who like music that I don't like, we typically didn't have a lot in common. But people who like music I did like, we typically had tons in common. So how neat is that? I thought maybe it had something to do with your own personal frequency in determining whether you like harmonics, or I was always a harmonic person, and a what's the word? Kind of, I don't know. It depends on my mood is what it has to do with. But in the 80s, I always loved the very negative, apocalyptic type sound. You know, that like The Cure and that type of thing. What was his name? The crazy weirdo guy. He did the album Metal. Oh, I don't remember. Gary Newman. He was interesting. But, you know, that's the Cars, whatever. Then they got a little poppy. But early stuff, the dark music. That's the way the 80s were. We were all going to get nuked at some point. But anyway, this says that it attaches to energy of the same vibrating frequency. So what if maybe that's what, you know, people are like magnets. Because people are vibrating fields of energy. And what if that makes, you know, sometimes you initially see somebody and there's just something about them that you just from the very beginning go, ugh, I don't like that person. And I don't know, don't judge a book by its cover. But on the other hand, there might be a reason for that. Maybe it's because their vibrating frequency is very discordant to your own. The more vibrating energy that is compressed into this field of energy, the more intense the vibration gets within the field. And eventually, the energy field manifests into matter, particle by particle. And as the father of quantum physics, Max Planck, once said, all of the physical matters are composed of vibration. Let's get to illusion. A table may look solid and still, but within the table are billions and billions of subatomic particles running around and popping with energy. The table is pure energy and movement, and everything in this universe has its own vibrational frequency. It is the law of vibration in action, and however, we can't see it, so it appears separate and solid to us. Remember, if you can't see it, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And we've looked at that time and time again. However, we can't see it, so it appears separate and solid to us, and this is actually an illusion. Our frequency of perception of the electromagnetic spectrum defines that we can and cannot see within the visible spectrum of light. However, at a different frequency, like X-rays, the entire solid object would appear completely like a sieve. Every object in the universe moves and vibrates, and everything is vibrating at one speed or another. Nothing is at rest. Everything we see around ourselves is vibrating at one frequency or another, and so are we. And however, our frequency is different from other entities in the universe. Hence, it seems like we are separated from what we see around us. People, animals, plants, trees, and so on. But we are not separated. We are, in fact, all living organisms in a continuous ocean of energy. Ding, ding, ding. We are all connected at the highest level, and that is the unified field. I truly, 100%, in all my years of research that I have dug into metaphysics and physics and math and science and space and all this crazy stuff that I've spent my life, that my family's all thought it's been lunatic, all comes together under this very guise. This completely, utterly makes sense. And it's so simple that it is beautiful. At the very leading edge of biophysics today, scientists are recognizing that the molecules in our body are actually controlled by these frequencies. Ding, ding. In 1974, Dr. Colin W. F. McClare at Oxford University, who's also a biophysicist, discovered that the frequencies of vibrating energy are roughly 100 times more efficient in relaying information within a biological system than physical systems, and such as hormones, neurotransmitters, and other growth factors and chemicals. And I bet you that is why they're digging so deeply into the brain. What is most interesting is that if a frequency is vibrating fast enough, it is emitted as a sound. But if it is vibrating much faster, it is emitted as a color of light. Hello. That's where the musical scales come in, I believe. If we wanted to convert sound to light, we would simply raise its frequency by 40 octaves. Now, how neat is that? I didn't know there was like a formula to that. So sound to light is up it by 40 octaves. This results in a vibration in the trillions of cycles per second. So if a pianist could press a key way above the 88 keys that exist on a piano, that key would produce pure light. This could create a chord of light in the same way that they create a chord of sound. And it would be seen as colors of light because it would be moving at the speed of light. Oh, guys, like I'm telling you, when I get to like this level of theory, I don't think we die. I really don't think we die. If matter and energy, I mean, obviously we don't have some sort of particle accelerator, but maybe there's a great particle accelerator in the sky and we become photons that then end up in the interstellar space and we become particleized that then turn us into a spectrum of light energy or something. And then photons never die, we discovered. So you're just kind of floating around in space. I don't know. It's nuts. But this article really gave me chills this morning because it was just so right on. All right, we'll continue a little bit more. This is truly down the rabbit hole. When two frequencies are brought together, the lower will always rise to meet the higher. This is the principle of resonance. So when a piano is tuned, a tuning fork is struck and then brought close to the piano string that carries the same musical note. The string then raises its vibration automatically and it attunes itself to the same rate to which the fork is vibrating. This principle of resonance works for biological systems too. So guys, we were talking all about those Gwen towers way back, and you could do a search before the first cup in Gwen or before the first cup in frequency, or I don't know, the voice of God weapon, where there was this whole frequency within the microwave range where microwaves could be converted to sound. This voice to skull and voice of God. That were being manipulated by the military during the first Gulf War in experimentation. Guys, there has been a lot of energy weaponry using frequencies that has happened at least since the 60s, but we were able to go way back to Bell Labs and find out that Bell Labs was working on directed radio waves for communication devices and being able to allocate the radio spectrum in little slices and dices and send directed messages for a very long time. Well, 5G is taking those theories to a new level. They are raising these frequencies and they are working with not only the FCC, who is pushing this forward, but with agencies such as DARPA, I love to hate, where DARPA has the Spectrum Collaboration Challenge that we talked about a long time ago, where they're looking now for competitors, and there's a lot of them I saw, to utilize AI to be able to splice and dice the radio spectrum so they will no longer have to have the FCC giving out licensing, right? Because right now you got to bid on a bandwidth, and then once you bid on a bandwidth, you own it for so many years, or you actually lease it, and you build your technologies to that bandwidth, but that is exclusively your bandwidth. Well, now they're saying, needing all of these new high bandwidth applications to send data ad nauseum to the cloud, to the machine, to the surveillance state. They're going to need frequency on the fly, bandwidth on the fly. And so let's just get rid of licensing and come up with a way to have AI allocate frequency on the fly and start crunching numbers and running algorithms to determine whether or not there is any type of behavioral issue that is ensuing that we should know about, and then send us a red alert. I know I got a little off topic, but this is all connected. When we start realizing that vibration, frequency, and energy is related to like the very basic state of matter and all living, existing things. And then we start looking at some of the things that they are doing with frequency and energy and manipulation and making it ubiquitous. So we are bathed in these frequencies that they keep telling us, don't worry about it, Johnny. It's not going to hurt you. As it's pushing that dopamine button, getting everybody addicted to needing to be connected to the machine 24/7. I mean, even down to our Wi-Fi, that is in the microwave range as well. They're having an effect on our physical body, on our mental state. They could potentially beam out some sort of frequency that could change your feelings or change your mood or, crazy things of that nature. We started looking at that a while back. There were some weapons out there that they had been tinkering with. It's very upsetting to me because, honestly, tinfoil hat. Remember that one I found on Amazon? Search it. It was hysterical, and they were making a bundle. I think they were selling them for like $15 or $30, and it was handmade. Sizes vary. Anyway, let's finish the story about vibration. The lower the vibration frequency, the slower the vibration. The higher the vibration frequency, i.e. the faster the vibration, and the difference between the manifestations of the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual level of connectivity results simply from the different levels of vibrating energy or frequency. So when the feelings of fear or grief and despair vibrate at a very low frequency, the feelings of love, joy, and gratitude may vibrate at a much quicker and higher frequency, and meditation states higher still, as demonstrated by the frequency of the electromagnetic waves generated by the human brain in a number of scientific experiments around the world. Well, think about this. What if 5G, being a much higher frequency, made us all feel feelings of love, joy, and gratitude as we were using our new super fast portable VR connected to the machine 24/7, able to stream movies anywhere, anytime, to make us want to merge with the machine. Guys, this is really crazy. Layers stacked upon each other all the way to full consciousness. In short, everything can be stripped away in layers in this order. Number 1 is physical. This is the lowest layer, and that is matter. Number 2 is vibrating field, and that is the layer above matter, and it is a vibrating field of energy. Number 3 is pure energy. If we peel away the vibrating field of energy, we have the layer of pure energy. Number 4 is consciousness. Above the layer of pure energy is consciousness. And number 5 is the source. And that is the highest layer, which is called a supra consciousness, which is the source of everything. That's pretty interesting that they broke it down in layers, because that's how networking is broken down as well. You start with the physical layer, which is like the network device, and it goes all the way up to the software and the operating parameter layer. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. But there's all these layers in networking that you have to kind of go through to get from one end of software to the other, and then as being physically connected. Layers of awareness within consciousness. Consciousness also has layers. The layers of awareness depend on the frequency of vibration, and those layers are defined in this order. Number 1 is action and reaction. Now, that's one of the basic laws of physics. For every action, there's equal and opposite reaction. This is the lowest layer of awareness. This is, in fact, the layer of physicality and of physical objects. Number 2 is stimulus response. This is the next layer above objects. We find this layer of awareness in cells. At this level, the cells are only aware of the group as a whole, a herd, and responding together with no realization of self or others. For example, nests and hives have this level of consciousness. And remember, they're working on the hive mind type stuff. Number 3 is stimulus individual response. This layer has even more of an awareness than stimulus response. This amount of awareness is the recognition of individuals. In this layer of awareness, and this is beyond the Borg layer, families are created through realizing individuals inside of the group or the herd. Monkeys and mammals similar to them have an awareness to develop families and demonstrate this layer of awareness. Number 4 would be the layer of discernment and judgment response. Stimulus response means reacting to things. To see similarities and differences between things is a higher order of consciousness, and it allows the ability to make decisions about things rather than just reacting to stimuli. This is the power of discernment or judgment, and the mind or ego is the tool that notices similarities and differences between things. Anything that has a mind or an ego has this layer of awareness or consciousness within it. Now, how weird is that's one of the things that they're working on with robot googly eyes and AI is the science of differentiation, of being able to detect similarities and differences between cats and dogs, let's say. Wow, so they're trying to build awareness and consciousness into the machine, or an ego. Every layer of consciousness above the lesser ones has the awareness of all the lower layers too. For example, when we are trapped in a traffic jam, we feel much like part of the herd. We are feeling the layer of stimulus response, like high blood pressure. And yet when we are feeling like an individual, there is an extreme difference in our awareness. This understanding of higher levels of consciousness is very important, and that is like when you're alone in the woods. The importance lies within the fact that consciousness is the source of everything, and that we have the awareness of every layer of consciousness in existence. This is significant because it allows us the privilege to attract and attach to any energy field. We have the availability to vibrate at different frequencies and manifest different energy fields into matter depending on our level of consciousness. And in conclusion, I'm probably going to spend most of the show on this type of stuff. Using the principle of resonance, we can actually increase the speed at which energy fields of our body and minds vibrate through higher frequency thoughts of joy, love, and gratitude. And I've read many, many times that gratitude is one of the most important frequencies or thoughts or theories or expressions that you can actually have as a living being. Gratitude is what helps you be human. Gratitude is what helps you work at that level of all life that gets rid of the me in the instant gratification society that has developed, where everything is being destroyed and enslaved and owned. I'm not talking about socialism here. I'm talking about life in general, and everyone live and let live and enjoy yourself and be happy for what you have, and don't be selfish and greedy and kill each other over it. Those types of basics. It all comes down to gratitude and accessing even higher states of consciousness via meditation. Modern science demonstrates that when pure energy slows down, lower dimensional matter is created. Conversely, when the vibrational field speeds up, the higher dimensions of consciousness can be accessed. And the higher our consciousness is raised, the closer to the source we become. In the beginning was the Word, are the primordial vibrations of sound and light, which according to thousands of years of Vedic science resonates to different phonetic sounds at the differing levels, including the original Aum, A-U-M. What are your thoughts, observations, and views? I gotta say, honestly, this is probably one of the best articles I have ever read that describes my theory since I was a kid, but it actually puts some science and thought and connects all the dots really, really well. And I truly believe that it boils down to that kind of simplicity. So here's one more story, and I don't know, we got about 10 minutes left. Nobody knows where brainwaves come from, and this is out of inverse.com, August 7th, 2017. The electrical waves at the heart of neuroscience have no identifiable source. Now, what's interesting is that I spent the last couple afternoons looking at the CT and MRIs that I had done on my own head. How many people get to actually look at the brain and look at the brain ad nauseum? There were over 1,400 images on the disc, which is pretty frightening when you come to think about it. But I was looking at all these structures inside of my head, and then I was searching like terms as I was reading the reports that went with each one, searching terms that they had mentioned to see what they were and looking up images as to what is normal and what is abnormal. And I was going, wow, man, I didn't know there are all these things in the center of your brain that control all these different functions. And they're like these little tiny micro organs right around the center thing that has like a circle around it. I've never seen a brain up close like that. It was pretty messed up. But brain waves are electromagnetic proof that we are alive, and decades of research have shown that these pulses of electrical potential reflect events at the root of our impulses and our thoughts. And as such, they underlie one of humanity's weightiest moral decisions, whether or not a person is officially dead. If a person goes 30 minutes without producing brain waves, even a functioning heartbeat can't convince doctors that they are alive. But as much as brain waves loom in our understanding of the brain, not a single scientist has any idea where they come from. And at least one researcher, Michael X. Cohen, PhD, an assistant professor at the Donders Institute for Brain, Cognition, and Behavior in the Netherlands, thinks it's time to fix that. In an April op-ed in the journal Trends in Neurosciences, Cohen argued that the time has come for researchers to figure out what those brainwaves have been recording for decades are really all about. This may be the most important question for neuroscience right now, he said to Inverse, but he added that it will be challenging to convince his colleagues that it matters at all. Today, as places such as Facebook race to read your brainwaves, and roboticists use them to develop mind control systems. We've talked about all those. And cybersecurity experts race to protect yours from hackers. It is clear that Cohen's sense of urgency is justified. So get into the MRI and the CT scan 4 times in a week. And let's do 1,400 images that we can study in a research hospital connected to the university. I mean, I don't know what to say, guys. I almost fell over when I saw 1,400 pictures. Like, did they really need that many? And did they really garner that much information? It was completely nuts. So what do we know about brainwaves is that when doctors stick silver chloride dots to a person's scalp and hook the connected electrodes to an electroencephalography or an EEG machine, the curves that appear on its screen represent the electrical activity inside of our skulls. The German neuroscientist Hans Berger spotted the first type of brainwave, and that was called an alpha wave back in 1924. And interestingly, that was right around the time that some of those original Bell Lab experiments were going on with frequency and communication. Researchers soon discovered more of these strange oscillations. There is the slow, powerful delta wave, which shows up when we are in a deep sleep. There is the low spikes of the theta wave, whose functions still remain largely mysterious. There's the faster and even stranger gamma wave, which some researchers suspect play a role in consciousness. These waves are at our root of our understanding of the shape and structure of human thought, as well as the methods doctors use to figure out how brains break down. It is thought that alpha waves, for example, are a sign that the brain is inhibiting certain mental systems to free up bandwidth for other tasks like sleeping or imagining. But where does it come from in the first place? So far, there has been no real satisfactory answer to this question, but Cohen is determined to find out. As one of the world's leading researchers on the brain's electrical activity, he hooks people up to EEG machines to figure out how their brains behave when they see a bird or think through a complex decision or feel sad. But Cohen is the first to admit that what is lacking in his research is context. not understanding how those patterns relate to the actual meat of the brain, neurons firing or not firing, getting excited or shutting down. Yeah, but George will help with his barcoding, leaves a huge mystery right at the center of brainwave neuroscience. Over time, and I don't know if they could actually see brainwaves in a CT or an MRI, so I take that back. I didn't actually get any EEGs, which I'm surprised. But they might be able to tell something, at least from imaging. But over time, it started bothering me more and more, Cohn told Universe. There is so much complexity going on at the smaller spatial scale that we have literally and he says this in his printed, we have literally no fucking clue on how to get from this big spatial scale to this smaller spatial scale, unquote. That is awesome. But part of why it is so hard to understand neuroscience research in the context of the brain, Cohen explains, is because neuroscientists themselves work in discrete, isolated subfields based on how big of a chunk of the brain they study. We used to call those in the technology field silos. Researchers studying the brain at the smallest level peel open individual neurons and watch the proteins inside them fold. Microcircuit neuroscientists map out the connections between neurons and then barcode them. And Cohn zooms out a little further, connecting electrical patterns and human thought, rarely concerning himself with single cells or small groups of neurons. But as we begin to fully grasp how complex the brain really is, Cohn says, it's increasingly imperative to find a way to bridge the research that happens at the macro and the micro scales. Ding-a-ling-a-ling. This is going to be the unified field for the brain, just like I was talking about. And, just like we were discussing in that last article, but all the different layers of consciousness, looks like that's what they're trying to decode right now. Finally, understanding brainwaves, he said, could be the key to doing so. And that is because brainwaves pulse at every single level of the brain, from the tiniest neuron to the entire 3-pound organ. And if you're recording from just one neuron, you will see oscillations, says Cohn, using a scientific term for wobbling brainwaves. But if you're recording from a small ensemble of neurons, you'll see them. And if you're recording from tens of millions of neurons, you'll see oscillations. So for Cohn, brainwaves are the common thread that can unify neuroscience. But the problem is most research only deals with electrical activity produced from tens of millions of neurons at a time, which is the highest resolution a typical EEG machine can capture without needlessly cutting into an innocent subject's head. Well, thank God. Leave it to DARPA. The problem is that this big, rough EEG research in humans isn't very compatible with the intricate neuron scale research done in lab rats. Consequently, we have plenty of information about the brain's parts, but no understanding of how they work together as a whole. It is the difference between what do Americans like and what does any individual American like. Ding-a-ling-a-ling, says Cohen. And that is a huge difference between what any individual does and what you can say as a generality about an entire population. While we know that all electrical activity is the result of charged chemicals sloshing around in our brain in rhythmic pattern waves, this doesn't tell us anything about the most important question, why they were generated in the first place. The problem with these answers is that they are totally meaningless from a neuroscience perspective. These answers tell you about how it is physically possible, how the universe is constructed such that we can make these measurements. But there is also a totally different question, and that is, what do these measurements mean? And what do they tell us about the kind of computations that are taking place in the brain? That is a huge explanatory gap. There are a few ways to bridge that gap. Scientists like those at Blue Brain Project in Switzerland. What is this? Like, everything is in Switzerland and Norway, guys. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on, and that's where they're doing some of that CERN stuff that we were talking about in turning matter to light and frequency. Scientists like those at Blue Brain in Switzerland are trying to do so by building a computerized brain simulation that is detailed enough to include the whole organ as well as individual neurons, which they hope can reveal a kind of cell activity that would cause different kinds of common EEG patterns to appear. One huge challenge to this approach, however, is that there is no computer that could simulate a brain's computations in real time. Just a millisecond of one neuron's time is a simulation that takes 10 seconds of real-time world for a computer to figure out. It is certainly possible, but doing so would cost billions of dollars. But don't worry about it, because if you remember, Google pulled some high-end mathematics chip maker out of retirement to help them make a whole new way of computing so they can increase their computer power like 10 or 100-fold, so they don't have to increase their data center capability. So it is coming. Cohen's plan, which relies on real-world experiments, is much simpler. Since you cannot cut open a human brain and start sticking electrodes in there to record activity, even in human rights challenged places, he says he's relying on rodents instead. And someone in chat this morning said that there were some new stories on mini brain balls. Well, don't think they're creating mini brain balls in the lab just for fun, just to sell them as pet racks. Oh no, I have a feeling that mini brain balls have something to do with this research and trying to decode what individual neurons do, because I bet mini brain balls don't have rights. They don't have rights in the lab. But what makes his work different is that he is hooking up these rodents to EEG machines, which researchers usually do not do. They say, why are you wasting your time recording EEGs from rats? EEG is what you do when you don't have access to the brain, so you record from the outside, he says. But rodents have brainwaves too, and their data can provide much needed insight in how to bridge the neuron-brainwave divide. His experiments will create 2 huge new data sets. The researchers could then cross-reference to figure out how neurons function and EEG behavior relates to one another. And with the help of some deep learning algorithms, they will then pour over that data to build a map of how individual sparks of neural activity add up to recognizable brainwaves. And if Cohen's experiments are successful, his team will be able to look at rodent EEGs and predict, with what he hopes is a more than 98% accuracy, exactly how neural circuits are behaving in the brain. So much for the Neurological Surveillance Center we read about a while ago. All right, guys, make sure you stick around. It is Wednesday, lots of live radio, and I will hopefully catch up with you soon. Everybody take care.